Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking with the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend, Owen, a 22-year-old entrepreneur from Boston who is now traveling the world, living the good life, running an online business. We'll get into all of that. But first of all, we are in Bali, which is pretty far from Boston. How did you end up here?
Yeah, good question. So I actually came to Bali last year. It was a big trip with about 20 other people from a couple different universities. Fantastic time, and kind of figured out this is one of the coolest places on earth, hands down. So yeah, kind of planning ahead. I was like, well, 2024, I definitely got to go back to Bali, and ended up here after traveling to some other locations beforehand.
What did you like about it so much, especially in the entrepreneurial sense?
Yeah, I mean, starting with the culture, I think living in a place where you feel really comfortable is great. Bali is hands down, I think, one of the best Venn diagram mixtures of different things that you would look for in a place to live. And having like this base Hindu culture just makes it like super karma focused. A lot of people are giving first, and you don't really have to worry about much. You can leave your key in your moped, won't get stolen. You can leave shoes outside, don't have to worry about it. That attracts people who want to, I think, build online businesses too. It's a good environment to do so. So yeah, I think it attracts a lot of cool people from all over the world, mostly Europeans, but still a lot of Americans, for sure.
Agreed. And we met at the gym, so that's a pretty good example of what just meeting people, going to the right gyms especially, I've noticed is like big here. And you meet people, you go out for a coffee, and then you end up moving into a villa together and live together for like 1.5 months.
Yeah, and there's so many coffee shops and places to work, and they all have Wi-Fi. And so it's cool to be able to just, I don't know, we stumble upon new people every day. We connect. It turns out we all have mutual connections. It gets really small really quick. It's cool.
Especially with time with the coffee shops, you walk in, you begin like greeting like 4 or 5 people because you know everyone. Right. It's like just walking to your chair or to your table, you dap up 5 guys, say hi, what's up, and then you already feel like welcome. And
Totally. There's not many places that feel like that, in my opinion, pretty quickly.
Yeah, I guess it's because it's so small here. There aren't like millions and millions of people living here. So especially like when you choose one area like this one is called Perirenan, for those of you who don't know. It's next to Canggu. It's just like one road basically with different coffee shops, and you usually stay in that area. So you end up meeting the same people, as you said, over and over again. It gets like pretty small pretty quickly, but I like that, being in like around the same people constantly. But enough about Bali. Let's get to business. As it said, when did you start just running businesses and trying to make something on your own, not just getting a job and getting a degree? When did that become a thing in your life?
Yeah, for sure. So I think most entrepreneurs have like a weird kind of start where they're, of course, selling something on the side. A lot of people have like the candy in school type of stories. I loved building things. I was not really fully money driven from the start. So I was just building things for fun. And then eventually got into 3D printing. And from there, ended up building a 3D printer on like an Nnet A8 base, and then customize all these products within the 3D printer to then 3D print pretty good products for other people. And learned that there's an online community that want kind of like figurines or like a clone trooper helmet printed in a certain color and whatnot, and started selling that stuff on eBay. Of course, wasn't making much money, but that, I think it was around like 15, 16. And then from there, kind of dove down the rabbit hole of learning what dropshipping is and going on YouTube, figuring out there's all these ways to make money. And as we do, I think everyone in the space kind of starts to go down all these rabbit holes, and there's so many opportunities online nowadays that we kind of, fall in this like plethora of options.
Yeah, definitely. You said eBay. Are there any other websites where you were selling this stuff, or?
No, only doing eBay.
Only eBay?
Of course, later on, Etsy became really big, but back then, Etsy was not prominent whatsoever. I don't even know if it existed. 20, what year would that be? But yeah, about like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So eBay was where everyone was shopping. I was still kind of like Amazon was starting to pick up, but you couldn't sell kind of one-off 3D printed files.
Yeah.
Or 3D printed objects on Amazon at the time, so eBay was perfect.
Okay, I see. And where did that lead you? You mentioned dropshipping. Is that something you tried afterwards, or?
Yeah, so I was actually working at a ski shop selling skis, and it was a great job, but I would get home from high school. I guess that's what people call it in Europe too, high school. Okay, yeah. And would end up going to work, and hourly wages are great for some people, but I hated thinking that my time was equated to a certain amount of money that I couldn't scale. So I would just be there after school and kind of like sitting there, like maybe it's a slow day, a couple of people come in to buy skis. And for the most part, I'm like, couldn't I just focus my time on like maybe doing something that actually expands? And this is after I was doing the 3D printing stuff, but didn't really make a ton of money off the 3D printing stuff, but stumbled upon drop shipping online from YouTube. I forget which guru. I think it was
Lots of them.
yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, especially nowadays, it's like a full four of them. But yeah, learned what dropshipping was. Started a store. At the time, I was obsessed with GoPro and video like production on like a small scale. So I had a GoPro, was paying for mounts, but mounts were like $30, $40 per mount. And you want all of them because you want to be able to throw one in your mouth, throw on a headband, a chest mount. So I'm not spending $500 just on pieces of plastic to mount it. So learned how to source on Alibaba, AliExpress, and then packaged all the GoPro mounts together into one package and sold for $50. Learned how to drop ship, which it was cool. First store teaches you a lot. I never dove fully into the marketing side, which is my biggest flaw. I was obsessed with the operations and running a store and drop shipping and how this works, and never actually dove into really successfully running Facebook ads, now the Meta ads, of course, Google ads, etc., which honestly was my flaw throughout my two other stores that I started after that. To touch briefly on the two other stores. Second store, I ended up meeting someone in a Reddit, actually dropshipping Reddit, like r/dropshipping, and he's from Australia. He knows how to run ads. So he's like, hey, let's partner. We ended up partnering on a store. We found a supplier in the US that has all these licenses for like Lil Wayne, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, all these different products. And we're like, hey, let's just throw together a massive store with every product they have a license for and then put that together. Since it was mostly clothing, profit margins were mediocre, but they were drop shipping for us, US based. So it was a win-win for us. We didn't really have much overhead, but that store was mildly successful. Nothing crazy though. But third store was selling flags. If you're looking to start a dropshipping store and you like the US market, especially selling to people in their like late teens, early 20s, flags, you can make a lot of money off it. You can source flags I was getting them for about like 99 cents per flag or less, shipped to the US. And I would buy in bulk and you can sell them for $20, easy.
What kind of flags?
Everything from, some crazy ones like, got like Putin shirtless. This was one back when like Trump and Putin in 2016. There's like all this stuff going on. So you ride the trends. People search this stuff. I had just like Tupac images with other rappers. I was actually ranked pretty high for Travis Scott tapestries. So that was our highest selling product. And that was like an easy kind of like one-off sell to a bunch of people. Probably put them in their dorm rooms or their rooms at their house. And then the cool thing about the market is every single year there's new college students or university students. So it just cycles. And you just ride the majority trend. And yeah, there's a couple companies doing pretty solid revenue numbers, like Hype Flags and Flag Nation. Look into those if you're looking to start it. Copy what they're doing. Learn how to run Meta ads or Google ads from this guy, and you'll be golden.
Yeah, it's interesting that flags are so like popular among teenagers. When I was in high school, we had just random flags hanging in the classroom, which the teachers weren't super happy about. Really? Like the most random flags, like Taiwan, the Russian flag, just for no reason, just to annoy the teachers. So if they had like a Putin and Trump flag, they would definitely hang it up. But yeah, true. It's something weird about like people showing, I guess, their affection to something through flags or some human desire.
Totally. And for the most part, these are kind of like goofy flags. Like you got like shirtless Gibby like on the wall. And for the dorm room, that's like perfect in what people want. But classroom, that could be a different market.
Yeah, I don't know if that's allowed in the US, even in most schools. I would guess not. In Norway, they try to ban it, but then
you're saying like a Gibby flag on the wall?
I don't think they would be super happy with it.
Oh yeah, obviously it's not in like a big classroom, but like our own
we had it like
rooms,
in the classrooms.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn, they need some Gibby flags in Norway on the walls.
I think they banned it now, but I dropped out of high school, so
okay.
I don't know what's happening there now.
True.
I'm kind of out of the loop. And after the drop shipping, where did that lead you?
Yeah, so as many of us do, it's almost like a I don't know, some could call it like shiny object syndrome, where there's now so many different business models, and of course they all sound fantastic, and you just got to choose one to roll with it. So I was testing just a lot of different business models. Pretty much like most of them failed. But my biggest takeaway was honestly staying in a long-term niche is hands down one of the best, I guess, like long-term things that you can do. And Robert Greene with the book Mastery, it's almost like so contradictory for us to kind of like hop between business models, because you can just stick with one long-term and then choose a industry that you like to apply that skill set to. So like Google Ads to e-com, or Google Ads to insert whatever niche you want to kind of like do it towards. Such a great long-term play. So I was hopping around a lot. I kind of worked part-time for some startups. I started some other things in kind of like the healthcare industry that flopped, but learned a lot. Some other stuff in like AI automations, kind of ran that trend. Obviously making money along the way and everything, so I can pretty much like sustain myself. Nothing where it's like, hey, I'm hitting solid 5 figures in revenue, recurring, and now I can scale this even more, 6 figures, et cetera, et cetera. So it's almost like we'd hit a plateau and we were only doing it for the money, whether it was just me or me with a co-founder, and then move to the next. So from there, kind of jumped around a lot, learned a lot, was hosting events too, worldwide, in the crypto space. That was great. And then after that, ended up pretty much getting to where I am now in the data space, because I needed data for an offer I was scaling. And so we hired out a team to essentially get that data. Found out, wow, this data is worth more than the offer we were trying to sell some people on. And then from there, I kind of moved fully into the data industry. And so we can move into that, but yeah.
That was actually my biggest breakthrough in life. Going back to your point with actually sticking with something, even if it doesn't feel like the most optimal model, because I think that's the excuse that most people give themselves. They find this new shiny object, like this could get me there faster to my goals, but it's not going to, because you start from scratch. So I was also jumping like between different models for like 5 years from when I was like 12 years old, trying like new stuff every second, third month, drop shipping NFTs, like so selling video games online. I was like, I tried everything. And then I decided with the agency, like, I'm done jumping. Like, I had this realization, I'm going to do this for 3 years. I told myself, I'm going to like grind this out for 3 years. Yeah. And if I don't see any results by the time I'm 20, so I was 17 at that time, I'm going to try something new. And then within 7 months, we were at like 15K a month just by sticking to it. So this one mindset shift completely like changed the trajectory of my life. And now we're here like a year later in Bali. So that's a good like nugget to take away.
Yeah. And real quick on that too, I would say I've tried to give people advice who ask me like, how do I find out what to work on? I like to think on 2 different planes. So the first bottom plane or bottom level is kind of like what you're doing either as a service or a business. It could be, of course, like Google Ads. For me, it's providing data to businesses. It could be drop shipping, could be pretty much like anything. And then that top level is where it's being applied. For example, you could start an e-com store in supplements. That's a whole massive niche in itself. And you could become an expert in just supplements with recurring revenue on a subscription basis. That's massive. You could also do, e-com in any specific niche. So I think it's one of those things where choose something you like to do on the bottom level and actually kind of enjoy it. It's going to be your day-to-day, and then you're going to hopefully put someone in to operate, and then figure out what niches you really enjoy and find interesting. Because in my opinion, based off how we all grow up, there's always things we're kind of intrigued by. And it's cool because you can now start a business in that and operate in that. You might be not starting like the next software company that's huge that you kind of like aspired to growing up, but you will probably in 10 years, 20 years when you have the skill set, you have some capital to sit on, etc. And starting out with maybe some sort of service-based offer in that niche is a perfect way to get into it and then play a long-term game. So
yes,
my 2 cents.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, as I said, just like promise yourself to actually do it for a certain amount of time. I think that's super powerful. Yeah. Because if you just say like, I'm going to do this until it works, that's too vague. You're not going to follow that advice. But if you tell yourself, I'm going to do this for 24 months and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do after that, then I think you'll see a lot more success a lot more quickly.
Totally.
You mentioned that you've gone into data. That's your current business. Would you mind elaborating a bit on that? What is it? What do you offer?
Right. So data, it sounds, first of all, it's a massive industry. When I say data, could of course go in thousands of different directions, from credit data. How am I supposed to know if you deserve a credit card or not? That's a massive industry. There's multiple billion-dollar companies in just that niche. What I'm focused on, and what I got into first, is actually contact data of decision makers. So when most B2B companies or any service-based businesses that are trying to reach another business want to find someone to actually reach out to, of course you need the contact info unless you're running ads. At the beginning though, you gotta do cold outreach. It's way cheaper, and I mean, depends on the business model. I'll talk for myself, but yeah, cold outreach at first. And a lot of companies struggle to find those contacts. Luckily, there are a lot of businesses out there like ZoomInfo, Apollo, Lemlist, ListKit. There's tons of different data providers in the B2B space. And what they do is they pretty much just scrape LinkedIn. It's almost like the bell curve meme where it's like one side's LinkedIn, the middle is all these tools that everyone tries to optimize and use, and on the right side's LinkedIn. Yeah. And both the novice and the pro both realize that LinkedIn is the whole source of B2B data as a whole. Yeah. And so what I specifically do is pretty much help niche businesses, such as a health tech or med tech company, reach out to the exact ICP that they want to find, because it's all these underserved niches. So of course, ZoomInfo, Apollo, they take about like 80% of the market in the B2B sector, but there's all these edge cases that struggle because they can't find the data. Kind of where I came in was I couldn't get the certain data that I needed, and I couldn't buy it anywhere. So I had to do it myself and go hire out a team to do it. So we pretty much are that team that comes in, partners with a business, provides their SDRs or even their email campaigns with the data they need to scale. And yeah, we were pretty much like a go-to-market expert / strategic data partner, I guess you could say, from a high level.
Yeah. And how do you go about finding that data?
Yeah, totally. So if you want to start looking into this, I would start with looking into a new company called Clay. Clay is kind of this centralized, I would call it like a modernized like Google Sheets with APIs that connect into it. So that's kind of like the central operating system for what we use. And so what we actually use it for is, first of all, let's just say a healthcare company is trying to reach out to, so take it back a step, a medical device company reaching out to private practices. They first need to figure out, okay, where are these private practices? How do we know they're qualified? So what we'll do is we'll scrape Google Maps at first. If it's a private practice, we can find them on Google Maps easily. And then from there, import into Clay. Now with Clay, we can either enrich it with a bunch of different data providers, or of course we can use our own internal tools too, and hopefully enrich that with either contact info, the decision maker at the private practice, using a lot of like public registries. So the MPI registry, which is a pretty much like healthcare database. Luckily, we can just scrape that and then pretty much like enrich it with certain data. And depending on what they're looking for, provide that data to the sales team. Sometimes we'll actually run the campaigns for them, cold email wise. But in reality, every single type of data requires a totally different strategy. And there's no kind of like click and let it play out type of operating model for this. It's kind of like every single time we have an inquiry or a new, client, we have to take it totally differently too. So yeah, it can be a flawed business model because it's not one of those things you can just operate on a repeating manner. But for the most part, we try to build out systems so we can do that. At the same time too, when we are doing the same data for multiple different clients, it becomes kind of second nature. So yeah, it's kind of a high level of it, but.
Nice. What are you doing in terms of MRR right now?
So that's a weird part because we do a lot of one-off inquiries. So when we're providing contact data, a lot of companies will come to us and say, hey, we just need, let's say 20,000 contacts. Yeah. And so we'll quote them at a couple $1,000s. And that month, it's like, great, we just closed someone on a couple $1,000s. Well, next month, they don't need us. Yeah. So it totally depends. Right now, this month, November, it was about like 7-ish. Yeah. It's not MRR fully.
So small technical issue, but we're back now. You mentioned 7K in November. Is that correct?
Yes.
How much of that is actual like recurring revenue, and how much of that is just one-off tasks? Would you say?
So about 4K is recurring. Right now we're in a pivot stage. So we've had, I would say like mid 5 figures on average when we were fully focused on kind of like having recurring clients and whatnot, but we're actually pivoting to niching down. I could talk more on that further, but
by mid 5 figures, you mean like 50K a month?
No. I don't know. Like on average, about like 20s was kind of like the highest we got on a repeating manner. But at that time, it was kind of a commoditized offer because the data we're supplying, and at that time supplying to, it was mostly recruitment firms. Honestly, it was exact same data they could get anywhere else. We were just cutting costs for them. And so they didn't really value the data that we were giving them, supposedly. It was more just us being able to do the prospecting for them, takes it off their team's burden. So we realized like, hey, we can't actually really scale this, because if they can find a better data provider for cheaper and it's a commoditized type of data, there's no point in actually staying in this long term. So I was in a big reflective state, realizing like I can't scale this to anything high. Plus, we were working our ass off every month to make sure we're essentially scraping and getting them the data they need. And we were struggling to even like keep that range, and like losing clients pretty fast. So realizing like, hey, we need to niche down, actually have an offer with some strategy behind it that they can really bank on. So now we're niching down. We're testing out different offers, but manufacturing tech, health tech, med tech is probably the main / deep tech. Of course, it sounds just like tech, but these niche offers or like niche industries that are underserved are the ones that in the long run we can really scale something in, because we can charge a 5K, 8K, 10K retainer. Opposed to before, we were charging like a 2K retainer max. And like the work behind it, of course, is not performance related for the most part. It's just, hey, we're supplying data. But when you're trying to bring on a ton of clients just to hit some like a quarter of like what you guys are doing revenue wise, it's like, shit, well, we're working way more potentially on stuff that like in reality is not going to scale. So we're pivoting right now. That's the yeah.
What caused you to go from those 20s to the 7? Is it that clients dropped off and because the business model was not sustainable, or are there any other lessons that people could take home?
Yeah, I would say when you're looking at a certain business model, it actually is good to niche down. Depends where you're at. If you're in Norway, I think you can be maybe broader and of course capture a market where you're not super niche down. In the US market, you're kind of a nobody if you're not niche down, because why would a whole sector even think about using you if you're also operating in totally different sectors? So kind of learned that the hard way, where it's like, hey, we've supplied data to random companies from, some apps. We were scraping restaurants for some random apps. We scraped like Crunchbase data for a fintech company. We were having clients come to us inbound wise from Twitter, LinkedIn, other sources, and cold outreach. And from that, we're kind of accepting anyone who'd come to us for one-off orders for the most part, and then some recurring when we tried to really push that. And I personally had the realization where, hey, we need to scale back, because like the current path we're on, we're going down straight towards like essentially a wall, and we already hit a wall. So, hey, let's take a step back. Personally, I'm fine with the MRR numbers / what we're doing revenue wise. Like, I don't need the money necessarily. So for me, it's like I have the freedom to say like, hey, I want to reset and actually build something worthwhile long-term that maybe we can even exit to into a niche that I'm actually really passionate about too. So it was all forced kind of by me. Of course, we could continue just bring on recruitment clients, maybe having like a cash flowing business, hopefully doing, I don't know, max maybe 60K MRR. But man, the operations behind that would be a pain in the ass. So yeah. Right. And the good thing is, of course, it is a pivot. It's not like we're jumping ship to a whole different sector. Yeah. It's essentially just applying what we already are doing, but to a sub niche that really needs it. Yeah. Of course, it's going to be harder to close these clients, because in the B2B space, especially like B2B SaaS, they'll jump ship between data providers really quickly. That's why I was saying it was like a very commoditized industry. It's only like who's got the best data for the cheapest. All right, let's hop ship. In the health tech, med tech, manufacturing tech, etc., it's much harder to close these clients. It's hard to get that data, but in the long run, much, much better as a business model.
Do you have any type of like commitments from your recurring clients that they have to stay with you for a certain amount of months, or can they just like jump ship, as you say, any day, and like you have no actual forecasting abilities?
Yeah, I mean, we don't, solely because they also know that like we don't really have anything proprietary. Yeah. We're essentially just a service-based business providing data. Yeah. We're doing the prospecting, the scraping, essentially the brunt work, taking off their employees. So that's what they're paying for. If they don't need that, they can jump ship. It's one of those things where, like, me as an operator, I definitely have to improve on a lot of things that I've learned, especially through trying to scale an MRR model in a bad kind of like niche that's obviously commoditized, and learning like, hey, just don't chase money down what everyone else is doing. Take a step back and reflect on that. Realize that, yeah, like essentially the MRR that we had at that time wasn't sustainable unless we were like really working hard to ensure that they still have a lot of good outbound too, because it obviously is relying on their performance. So we can get into the whole cold email sector. That's been changing a lot, but their outbound has to be performing for them to even need to buy data. And of course, their offer and product market fit has to be there too, so that they can actually be closing clients to then pay us to essentially give them more data to then feed into their SDRs, AEs, close more sales, buy more data, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
I see. Nice. Have you considered doing some kind of consulting on the actual outbound side to get the leads to perform better for the clients, or have some partners who do that to then ensure that your leads actually deliver a higher quality service to your clients?
Yeah, totally. So two things. One, since we were kind of accepting any clients, because we could sell kind of like one-off orders data-wise, a lot of the clients we were getting weren't product market fit, or they didn't have a product that was actually worth us taking on as an email marketing agency, quote unquote. Because we essentially be like running down towards a brick wall of us essentially getting like fired because their offer is bad. We're cranking out cold emails, but not much is converting. So yes, we do advise on cold email infrastructure, and we'll say, hey, we can set this all up for you. This is how many emails you can send, but we just set that up for them, and they'll pay us kind of like a one-off fee for that.
Yeah.
We have to be really careful. And a lot of lead gen agencies, they'll talk on this a lot, that you have to really be careful on who you take on as a client, really qualify them. It's really hard to all the time qualify them. So looking at their entire go-to-market strategy thus far, seeing, okay, well, what's worked, what hasn't, especially talking to their sales team, like who are the leads that are actually closing, look at their current, if it is a SaaS company, MRR, who are their current clients? Can you find those clients out there in the market too that have a similar maybe tech stack or problems, et cetera? But for the most part, yeah, it's one of those things where we just have to provide like good data within a kind of structure that they have to perform on. So cold email wise, no, at the moment. Later on, when we do take on clients that we're backing in a way, like we're investing in them as well, in the health tech, med tech, and like manufacturing space, like Internet of Things, going into factories, monitoring equipment, et cetera. We will be doing cold email too. Yeah. But that's later down the road once we actually get there.
Okay, nice. And going back to your point about selecting clients, I think that's a very important thing to understand for people who are starting agencies or starting online service-based businesses, because in the beginning, it's just about getting those clients. You close everyone. Like when we started the agency, we were just like saying yes to everyone, no matter if they have like a shitty product, no matter if they had like a not so ethical product. You just wanted to like get that MRR going, and you just like sign everyone. Right. And now we are super picky with our clients as well. I would say we say no to like 80%, 90% of sales calls, and not the other way around. Right. So I think that's important for people to understand. At some point, you have to become a lot more picky. If not, you end up in this position where you have an unscalable business that is not going to go anywhere because you're not specialized in anything. You just like say yes to everyone.
It depends on the business model or service-based. If you are a service-based business, honestly, the revenue that they're currently doing is really important. I would say, like, for me, I don't want to work with a company that's doing probably like under 50K a month, 100K a month. That's even super small. But vetting and making sure it's really hard for them to book a call, and making sure you actually are really careful with your time, because the companies that will want to hop on a call typically are the ones who are not qualified, because they want pretty much like a Band-Aid on a solution that obviously comes down to their product. So
For us, it's all about like product market fit and having a good product. So all of our clients, like I would buy their products if I had the issue that they're solving, so I think that's super important. Just thinking like, is this something that I would buy or use? Because if you don't even believe in it yourself, and how are you going to sell? That's even more important for marketing, what we're doing, but even for data, like you won't feel as motivated to do the work if you know that the product isn't actually good. You're not actually doing the world any services. You're just selling some bullshit. But in terms of this pivot that you're doing, what's the goal going forward? Yeah, like an MRR goal that you're striving for.
Yeah, so once we do really niche down, I kept saying, of course, health tech, med tech, blah, 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 blah. But we will be in one specific niche and want to become like the kind of go-to-market company to partner with. So we'll be very picky who we work with, but we're going to be pretty much working hand in hand with our sales team, with the CEO, et cetera, to ensure they have pretty much a good value prop with their cold outreach. Their sales team can actually have the internal operation so that all they have to do is dial. They don't actually have to be working on prospecting, actually going through and like checking out, okay, an internal contact came in from a cold email. Now what do we do with it? Making sure that those salaries are going to the most efficient use of time will be kind of what we're trying to help clients with. And then from there, we should be able to hit 200K, 300K MRR because the clients we'd be working with are doing really high revenue numbers per month. Therefore, we can actually take a pretty good performance and kind of scale with them. And the good part too is the B2B space is very sticky. So once we're actually integrated with the whole sales process and flow, how they operate, there's very, very low churn. And honestly, a lot of it can be kind of automated too. So that's kind of what I'm looking to be doing the next, I would say, year. I need to get out of Bali. Bali is great, but for me, scaling something, it's kind of the inverse. It's a good place to reflect. I've come across this reflection now. Now I got to go and put in the effort, put in the work. So that's kind of what I'm looking to do next. It's really like sit down, lock back in, actually scale this up.
Yeah, and after those 200-300K a month, you want to just stay there, outsource the business, and like go painting in the woods, or do you have like any future businesses that you're?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I love building things. I mean, I've been building things, like I said, from like an early age. I love the act of building and strategizing and helping. So I'll be starting stuff the rest of my life. Of course, from my perspective now, I would say once this is scaled to a point where I can somewhat take myself out of the business, I will be building a lot of kind of like niche SaaS models on top of data layers. We didn't talk about like the whole data industry as much, but there's kind of like base layer data companies. So for example, you could do like geospatial data, you could do pretty much like any type of data and then build vertical SaaS on top of that. So then we could build something in agriculture, we could build something in defense, etc. That's just some random examples, but building data businesses that are pretty much like a SaaS front end is probably what I'm going to be doing next. Who knows, I might be doing that sooner than later too. We actually have a lot of requests for specific businesses. Essentially, like people are asking for a SaaS that will do a certain thing. So we might do that sooner than later. We just got to stay focused first.
Perfect. Sounds like you have a good plan and you're pretty well set up to first scale to those MRR numbers that you're looking for because you actually understand how to go there now. Because usually like when you start a business, you look at it like, I have no idea how I'm getting to 200K a month, but it sounds like you have a vision of how to get there, what team members you need and just how to position them.
So true.
The agency. So it was amazing having you on. Let the people know where they can find you online.
Yeah, 100%. I would say Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. So all three of them is my name, Owen, O-W-E-N, and then Coonahan, C-O-O-N-A-H-A-N.
I'll throw it up on the screen.
Yeah, perfect. You can follow me on all three. Instagram, just like my lifestyle, us like dirt biking around a volcano, super cool stuff. LinkedIn, I really post on LinkedIn, but happy to connect. I will be posting soon as we niche down. Twitter, I post a lot about data and helping companies get data. So feel free to follow me there too. All my DMs are always open. Happy to answer questions, give my 2 cents. So cheers.